Livestream with Unity. I'm your host, Manuel Sainsily, today, and we're going to talk about Android XR. And I know a lot of you are super excited about the subject, so we're going to have an actual great team with me. I'm not going to be alone presenting. We're going to show them in a few moments. We're going to get an overview of Android XR, how to get set up. We are exploring some samples from Unity, and you're going to see how easy it is to build on this new platform. So before we get started, why don't we look at a little trailer for the platform? Jackson, let's do it. That was awesome. And I'm joined by my super cool colleagues. We go through a little round of introduction. But before I do that, can everyone in the chat right now tell us where you are joining us from? I saw some people from Pittsburgh, New York. Let us know. Trisha, who are you?
My name's Trisha. I am a product manager on the XR team at Unity. So my primary focus is Android XR, which is why I'm here today.
Yeah.
But I stretch across a lot of open XR initiatives. So there are some other things that interact with Android XR and other platforms that we'll talk about today a little bit. And I've been in the XR industry for what feels like about a decade, back in beta days of ARKit and AR Core, and then with a couple of different XR companies along the way.
So you're a real OG. Went there before COVID, survived the VR storm. Love it. What about you, Jacob?
So I'm Jacob. I'm the senior developer on the XR devices team. We've been working hard on integrating Android XR into the Unity engine and editor.
Amazing. So we have people from Sweden, from Spain, Nigeria, Boston, Portland, Guadeloupe, my hometown. Hello, Fredo. People from Dakar, Senegal, Florida. Love it. So this is what I love the most about these moments, is that we get so many eyes from all around the world. Everybody's excited about one thing. So we're going to try to show you guys as much value as we can. But before we get too serious, I like to ask those questions. Trisha, what's your favorite game?
Fantastic question.
Or XR game, if you want. It could be both.
So this was defined specifically during COVID. I was in 11s probably every day for multiple hours a day. So it's ping pong. And I was playing with friends in other countries while we were all on lockdown. So the presence was really nice for me. And I'm pretty good.
So you would say you're competitive?
I would say I'm pretty competitive.
Okay. Yeah. What about you, Jacob?
I mean, it's hard to give me one, favorite game, but it jumps between like VR stuff. I tend to play like No Man's Sky or Into the Radius have been a couple of big ones for me, and then also some Beat Saber. Play with my family, and it's funny. I actually recently jumped back into like the game that really got me into first-person shooters, the original Unreal Tournament.
UT,
non-VR, of course. Yep, UT.
Love it. For me, I would say I love 11's Tennis, which is a VR game where you get to play ping pong with your friends. I get competitive too. It was great because when it first came out, it didn't have mixed reality at the time, so it was just fully VR. But I love the cottage that it puts you in, so I was playing with my friends in it during COVID as well. Since the MR version,
too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you can have people in your living room And I heard, I don't know if that's true, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong, that the game physics is so accurate that people that actually play tennis table tennis, ping pong, whatever you call it, where you are in the world, um, that are super professional, even world champions, they do play the game as a training system, because the game is so accurate that you're like, try to beat the AI in that game, impossible. I'm really struggling through that. But playing multiplayer with friends, I'm better. Awesome. So I see people in the chat telling us that they are coming from Kazakhstan as well. I know some people are probably joining from very late in the night or the evening. So thank you for tuning in. And without further ado, let's get to talk a little bit more about Android XR. So we're gonna have an overview that Trisha is gonna go through with some slides. I promise it's interactive, and feel free to ask any question in the chat. We're pay attention to everything you're saying, and we'll make sure to answer them. We have a Q&A section at the end as well. Let's go.
All right, so these slides are intentionally fairly boring because it's really not about the slides. I want to make this conversational and kind of just talk through some of this stuff. So if as we're going through these things, you're like, Trisha, why are these slides just, there's no animations, there's nothing going on. It's really because I don't want this to feel like a presentation. I want it to feel like we're just talking through this new platform. So where I wanted to start was really kind of what is at the core of this new platform. And, Google's been very, very vocal about this. And this is very near and dear to what we believe in at Unity. So our goal is build once, deploy to multiple platforms. So with that, when you look at the adoption of open standards, so OpenXR and Vulkan, and if you're not familiar with these working groups, these are they're working groups that have a goal of really, working with the different platforms, companies out there, and creating a defined standard, and ideally a defined standard that we all adopt. So what that means is when you've got these open standards and multiple platforms are leaning into them, you're not locked into a specific vendor, right? You're not locked into a specific platform. You can target new devices easily. You can rely on consistent behavior between them. And so, those working groups, you've got the OpenXR working group and you've got Vulkan as well. And what OpenXR does is think of it like a common API for XR hardware and runtime. So when you're doing that, when you're using that, it means that when you've got feature set, it's very likely that that feature set on OpenXR platforms works very similar on those platforms, or even one-to-one identical. And so that gives you really kind of a lot of comfort that you're going to have consistent behavior across these platforms and across these devices. And that's super important because if anybody's looked over the last couple of years, we have a lot of new devices coming out, right? There's a lot of XR devices that are entering the market. And what companies are really talking about now is not just one or two devices for their platform, but just like we have on mobile phones, we have choice, a lot of different devices at a lot of different price points. So when you're building as a developer, ideally, you're not building a new app for every single one of those platforms and for every single one of those devices. So that's where we get into the beauty of OpenXR. And when you look at Vulkan, so Vulkan is it's a cross-platform graphics API. It's low level, and so it allows for finer control over the GPU. And what this means is that we've introduced Vulkan is the recommended graphics API for Android XR, and it has allowed us to bring in modern features, so things like multi-view and foveated rendering that you're going to see in Unity 6. So by Google adopting these and really being part of developing these open standards and promoting these open standards for Android XR, it's going to give you the benefit of ease coming from other OpenXR platforms, ease building for OpenXR platforms, and then ultimately, as more devices come out, you'll be able to kind of align with that Unity vision of just building once, deploying
Deploy everywhere.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I'm obviously a big fan of OpenXR. You're going to see as we start to talk about a lot of new Unity 6 features, the reason we were able to bring them to you quickly and easily and across platforms is because of OpenXR, right? Because you've got these XR specific features that now work on multiple platforms. That's a really beautiful thing.
I
All
love
right.
that.
And with that, I want to kind of talk about on our next slide, just talking about Android XR and Unity 6. So I mentioned Unity 6, and some of you may be coming from projects on previous versions. Sometimes that update to new versions is not super fun. What I can tell you is that the move to Unity 6 has been pretty clean for most of our developers. With Unity 6 forward, that move as you're updating version should be much smoother than you've seen in the past. So I think that's been really a pain point for developers in the past. What we've seen with a lot of our early access developers on Android XR is if they're already utilizing OpenXR, moving to Android XR probably takes a day or two on some of their projects. Moving to Unity 6, depending on how complex their project is, might take a little bit longer, but a lot of developers have been able to accomplish that in 1 to 2 weeks, which is pretty good. So once you make that update, you've got access to a lot of new features. And that's why we're really promoting this Unity 6 workflow. So you're going to see things like build profiles that are specific to these platforms. We've got an Android XR build profile in Unity 6. What that means is setting up projects is complex, right? It's not something people like to go through. That's not the fun part of XR development. So with that, you can use the new Android XR build profile, right? You can pull in recommended packages. It automatically has some of your settings set. These act like project assets. So you can, save them, you can manage them, you can share them across your team so that you all have the same setup. So there's a lot of advantages there. We are really focused on performance in Unity 6. And so what that means is you've got things like foveated rendering. You've got things like URP application space warp. I'll talk a little bit more about those. You've got composition layers. So you've got this higher visual fidelity for your experiences. So really our goal there is, Unity, it's more powerful, it's more stable, it's more forward looking. And, XR is getting a lot more support in Unity 6 forward. All right, let's move to the next one. Okay, so you're gonna kind of see the packages out there, and obviously we have our first party packages. There are also third party packages. So Google's got a package that they maintain as well. So what we have is we've got the Unity OpenXR Android XR package. Now, I'm going to kind of talk about our entire XR ecosystem and where this folds in. But what this means is that you've got a primary Unity package for Android XR. So you don't need to pull in that Android XR extensions package that Google's created. You've got this primary Unity package to get started. Jacob's going to talk through that today. And what this does is that means it enables just device support for your AR Foundation projects, right? You've got all of your foundational features in there. We have been working really hard this last year to make sure that if you want to build for Android XR, you are now set up. We just hit verified package. So what that means is you are now set up to build production ready apps. Okay, you should have all of your foundational features there. You can go in, you can build MR and VR experiences. I know it says currently pre-released right there. That's because I pulled this in from, I don't know, maybe about a month ago. We were at a pre-release state. We just hit verified on the 30th.
Awesome.
So good stuff.
So you're giving us like the most up-to-date information, even post AWE.
Yes. So even at AWE, we were still kind of in this place of like, okay, we're right on the horizon, but we've gotten there. That's a huge milestone.
For those who don't know, AWE is also a very big XR conference worldwide that Unity attends every year, and a lot of new stuff happened there.
Yes, a lot of new stuff. A lot of things get introduced and released at AWE. There were some really cool games this year that got released at AWE. And when we were at AWE, we were kind of right on the horizon of this verified release. And that's a big deal for Unity, because what it means is we are committed to continuing support for that package, right? So we are invested now kind of for the long run is what it means. And if you haven't tried out experimental packages, highly encourage you do so. That's where you get the first look at things. The same thing with our Unity editor betas. But once we kind of move into that pre-release, then we start to look at stability of the platform. So we want to make sure that you can go into these production-ready apps. You can build for these new platforms, and you're not going to experience any big breaking issues. So we're a verified release. That's a great thing.
I think that's a
Now,
very positive message also for a developer to hear, whether you're a beginner trying to understand the world of XR and getting into it, or solid people that have been in the space for a long time, like knowing that you're going to work with an engine that is dedicating to that new platform and being up to date as much as possible gives you a reassurance that you're investing your time somewhere that's valuable.
yeah, I think it's such a good call out, because if you look around and you look at dedicated support for XR, right, and other options that you've got available to you, Unity we've really put our resources into XR. We do have a pretty good sized dedicated team around XR. And just like Jacob's here today, Jacob's one of those individuals who consistently works on Android XR. And so when we're looking at support and introducing new features and how do we support XR developers, we're in this. And we've got defined roadmaps, and we've got milestones, and we've got things like that. So
I didn't say it, but that's one of the biggest reasons why I joined the company 4 years ago, is because I was in the XR space. I wanted to work on the edge of what's happening in that space. And it's been a really beautiful ride to see how things evolve. And now that this new platform is coming in, we're already engine ready before the headsets or the devices hit the people. So it's pretty cool to see.
yeah, and I think, Unity, we typically are there at day one. We were day one for Android XR. So, we launched this platform alongside them back in December. We had our experimental package at that time. We've been consistently working with EAP developers. We are doing everything that we can do to really prepare developers for this platform, so that as soon as you have device availability, and even before then, you can do quite a bit. We've seen devs get to about 90%. Even on just porting experiences or creating new experiences.
That's huge.
Yeah. So when you look at that, ideally, if you start building now, you're right in line with device availability, right? Which, has been talked about as targeting later this year. So you've got a verified package today. You can go use that. You can start porting an experience. You can start a new experience. And if you want some additional features, you can pull in the Android XR extensions for Unity package. So that's Google's maintained package. That is a supplemental package. It's got additional features in there. It is a package that typically has features that we're not quite yet ready to maybe move into the main package. So we're constantly evaluating that. In fact, we've been evaluating some of the features that are in there right now, and how valuable they are to developers, and when and where do we bring those in. So think of it as kind of like this nice experimental playground for new features. And Google's very eager to introduce new features and to start thinking through cutting edge features. And we're eager to support those as well. So, so you do have these two robust packages. You can use them separately. You can use them in combination with each other. But you have a lot of opportunity for going beyond those foundational features with some of the new things that are getting introduced.
Awesome.
All right. Okay. So going back to kind of that whole XR ecosystem and why we have, Manu over here at Unity, and hopefully we're going to keep him at Unity because we keep building on this. So, the way that we built Unity's XR ecosystem is really to be modular, to be extensible. So again, going back to that mission of like build once, deploy across platforms. So you've got XR Hands, you've got AR Foundation. If you've been building in Unity for a while, you're probably very familiar with these packages. You probably use them quite a bit. You've got the XR Interaction Toolkit, OpenXR, which extends to different OpenXR platforms like Android XR. You've got composition layers, which is another one of my babies. So I highly encourage you to get in there and try comp layers out if you haven't. We also recently went to verified on comp layers. And then you've got the OpenXR Android XR package. So when you look at these, think of it this way. You have the advantage of shared features, right? So you're going to have some things that are platform specific, device specific. But ultimately, you want the majority of the work that you're doing to extend across multiple platforms, multiple devices. And that's what you've got with the ecosystem, right? So, if there are things like, I'll give you an example. For Android XR, Android devices really care about light estimation, right? And how they are performing that. And they have advanced techniques for it. So ARCore actually really sets the standard there. Android XR wanted to bring this approach to OpenXR. And so they introduced light estimation through OpenXR. And that is something that they've introduced to the Android XR platform. Same thing with performance metrics, right? There may be different performance metrics that are valuable on different platforms or different devices. And so you might find places where in the OpenXR ecosystem, platforms choose to do things a little bit differently, right? And that might be based on what they think is best for their platform and their developers. But you're still going to get about that 90 to 95% overlap, which means you get to kind of fine tune on these platforms, and you're going to get the chance to fine tune on Android XR. But ultimately, most of the stuff you're doing there, ideally, you don't have to rewrite. It's stuff you've already used, right? So if you're using things like hands, XR hands, you've got, standard hand tracking that you're used to in this ecosystem. If you're using XRI, you've already got ready to use input actions, right? You've got interactor logic, you've got, your raise and poke and direct touch and things like that. So you've got familiarity, and that familiarity hopefully should be a benefit to you. And if you feel like it's not, what I would say is, go in and explore some of these packages and look at how you can take some of these things and really lean into that defined standard and stretch it across platforms, right? Because ultimately, you want to be on as many platforms as possible.
So you can reach more users.
So you can reach more users. And that's, I think, one of the biggest benefits of Android XR is you're leaning into that Android ecosystem. And that's a lot of users. And
it's great for the XR industry as well.
It is
welcoming more people to that space, and creates even more friends to play with.
It is exactly that. I think when we all look at XR, ultimately we need the XR industry to grow. We want the XR industry to grow. And as new players come in, especially if they're big players, and particularly if they want to contribute and grow this ecosystem. And that's really what we're seeing from these platforms, especially as they lean into things like open standards. They want to define these things, grow these ecosystems, and ultimately figure out how you get devices and these platforms in the hands of as many people as possible. So, that really is the goal when we're looking at creating this ecosystem alongside partners.
Love that. There is a point to be made about accessibility as well, and following open standards means that you're also welcoming anyone from any background and any type of change in their body or mind. And to be able to actually follow those standards, make sure that the platform that use those standards or the engine that follow the guidelines of those standards give an equal experience to everyone, regardless of where they're coming from.
Yep.
That's also very beautiful to see from OpenXR and Vulkan and so on.
Yeah, and those are some of the challenges that we're all thinking about, right? And we're trying to solve and trying to make sure we solve in how we architect these systems. So, when you think about different devices have different capabilities, and how does one platform or, this collection of platforms support that? And how do we support that and still make it as easy as possible for developers? And so, when we're looking at this ecosystem and the availability of build options for developers, and that build once deploy everywhere, is also taking into account how do we make sure that's still the case when this ecosystem continues to grow.
Love that.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about some of those performance optimizations that we've got in Unity 6. And, these are things that are enabled through OpenXR. So again, you get a lot of graphics and editor benefits through these OpenXR extensions. And sometimes people say like, oh, graphic stuff, I don't want to touch that. That feels complicated and it feels heavy. And listen, some of it's fun. I personally love, things like shader graph and I love particle systems, but those things can be quite heavy. And when you start to, build on your application and experience, and you're building these more robust experiences, your render budget matters. And so part of the beauty of the things that we're introducing in Unity 6 and how these really, really have an impact on XR experiences is you do have a lot of performance optimizations that you should be taking advantage of. And again, these stretch across, most of these stretch across OpenXR platforms. So you get to use them in multiple places, and they are big benefits to Android XR. So you've got URP application space warp, right? That's a feature that you can turn on. It reduces your application's rendering workload. It's going to free up resources for you. So again, thinking about that render budget and how do you get more out of it? How can you use higher quality graphics and still get good perf? That is always the struggle. Same thing with eye-gazed foveated rendering. So this came in Unity 6 Forward. And you can use that. It's in combination. The reason it's called eye-gazed foveated rendering is it's using eye tracking, right, to determine which regions benefit from higher quality. So, when we're looking through, we don't need everything to be, the highest quality for them. It really depends on where we're looking and what we're focused on and what benefits from that. And by doing that, you can improve GPU perf, right? So you're just concentrating your quality where your focus is. And again, these are things that by enabling them through OpenXR and by bringing them in, what we're trying to do is actually make them more accessible, right? So you're not trying to get these perf benefits by doing really extreme things. You can use them just like you would use any of the other XR features. And you can bring them very, very easily into your applications so that graphics doesn't feel like this really kind of complex abstract thing. It feels like something where you can take advantage of these features, and you can take advantage of these features in the same way you would think about some of these other foundational features.
I personally love the one on the sides, on the right side with the eye gaze foveated rendering and the eye tracking, because it really makes a lot of sense to remove the quality where you're not looking. And now that we have headset that can track people's eyes, sure, there is always the fear of tracking and things like that, but I think the value is on the experience side, being able to enable that in a safe way for users and developers, and then leveraging that for, in this case, performance optimization or new users interface or ideas that make games more immersive. So it's very nice to see this coming.
Yep. I completely agree. All right, let's go to the next slide. And
I know some people are asking in the chat, we want to see it working in Unity. It is coming. That's why Jacob is here.
Yes, I am going to wrap this up because I want to pass it over to Jacob because, listen, telling is great. Showing is much, much better. Couldn't agree with you more. But I also kind of want to just talk really quick about what you can do next. So if you leave this live stream and you're like, hey, I want to go try this out, you've got a lot of options, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you can go to our docs. Everybody probably knows that. Those get updated with each new version. So if you go to, you'll see latest at the end of that URL, you can get the latest for verified release. Google also has their own docs. So they've got their own docs at android.com. Develop XR, and that's where they kind of walk through some of their own showcase samples and things like that. So that brings me to our samples and templates and the Google Showcase samples. So Jacob is actually going to walk through one of our newer templates. That's the cool thing. You get the benefit of all of the stuff we've developed in the past for the XR ecosystem and all of the new stuff coming. So he's actually going to use the multiplayer template today, which we recently released. It's a fantastic template. Even if you're not looking to build a multiplayer experience, you're going to get a lot of value from it.
Yeah, it's worth it, even if you're not doing multiplayer.
It is. And also multiplayer is very hard. So this template is such a lifesaver for so many people interested in multiplayer experiences. And I also want to give a plug to, outside of the Air Foundation samples, which you can use, our templates, like the multiplayer template Jacob's going to talk about today. Google has their own showcase samples. So if you have watched any of their videos from their talks, they love to show the talking couch. The talking couch is fantastic. Yes. And they did the talking couch through face tracking, right? And so you can take that, you can reflect it back in animated objects. If you go check out their Google Showcase samples, you can easily clone that, run it in Unity 6, and you can try out their face tracking sample scene. So you have a lot of options to get started. You've got the verified package, you've got these samples and templates from us, Showcase samples from Google. So that means nobody has an excuse today. This live stream and you haven't been in there.
And the links are in the chat, so you cannot say
links are in the chat. Yeah. So lots to get you started. Unless you are a super brave person and you just want to start porting your project today, which if you are, high five to you. I think that's awesome. So with that, let's go over to the showing portion. Jacob he's going to open up the multiplayer.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we're going to start from the base at the hub here, and we're going to work through the mixed reality multiplayer sample that we were just talking about.
Just before we hopped on the live stream, I was telling Jacob that my mood is the little frog in the background right now. I'm on for the ride. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And keep coming with the questions in the chat. We're taking notes of them. Thank you, Jackson, which is not hosting today, but he is in the back making sure we have all the links in the chat, that all your questions hit our FAQ. So even if we don't go through every single question today, we'll be able to come back and answer them. We have the discussions forum as well if you have more pertinent questions that you absolutely need an answer to. So don't feel free to ask questions is what I'm saying.
Yep. And so the samples are available through the Unity Hub. You can download them right from here. And I've already downloaded the samples. So we're going to create our project.
And thanks for showing us this, because the hub also just got a recent fresh update visually. So
yes. It's
that some people might have been confused about where to click. So this is perfect.
Yeah, we've got 3 separate tabs there. The built-ins and the samples are part of that.
I love that it's in it right now and you don't have to go on the different tabs. So congratulations to the team for updating the hub. Also, if you're watching from Twitch, or even if you're watching from YouTube, this video will be on VOD on demand after. So you can always go back to that particular moment and see exactly where Jacob clicks in case you missed it live.
Yep. So we're going to be running through a bit of a load here. I actually got some of the stuff up in the background. It'll run you through a tutorial, and we might jump back to that.
Nice.
It's got UGS set up because you need to set up UGS for the built-in multiplayer. That does all the hard work for you. The important bits I think that you should know about is there's once you get through the UGS setup, you'll have the template tutorials and stuff here, and that actually helps point out the different features of the scene and the tutorial bits to figure out how you can modify if you're just starting out with it.
And I love this section. It's so clickable. It stays on the right, but you don't have to keep it if you're done with it. You can close it, and you can always reopen it, and you get these little check marks as you progress through the tutorial.
Yeah. And one of the things that's already done here, but we'll kind of go through again, is that we've got the project settings we'll be setting up. So we've got the easy option if you're starting new is that you've got the build profiles for Android XR, but you can also, as many things in Unity or packages, we can also add the package as just an additional component. So we've got installed by name, and there is actually, I don't know if we'll be able to include the link, but there's a whole help page that we've got documentation for setting up the package through the package manager as well. So we've already added on this one, but we'll jump back to that.
And Jackson just put it in the chat. Thank you, Jackson.
Thank you, Jackson.
Yeah, and you'll see that's the 1.0 package. So that's the verified package.
Yep.
And yeah, just like Jacob said, if you're using the Android XR build profile, it will pull in the latest recommended. So it should pull in this one.
Mm-hmm. And definitely recommended 1.0. And yeah, we've got all of, if we jump over to the Android XR feature groups here, we've actually got all of the features that Tricia was talking about. We've got various AR features enabled through, and mixed reality features enabled through the cameras and pass-through. Nice. So this is, in fact, the scene we're in here, the MR scene has a pass-through camera option. So that's enabled through our Android XR AR camera, and that's through AR Foundation. So we've done a lot of the work to try to make everything as seamless as possible for moving over from any other major headset, just especially if it's OpenXR, but any little wrinkles we've tried to work out for you as well.
And the team has been hard at work. Like, this list is huge, and I loved how easy it is from the naming perspective. Like, you know what it is, AR face, AR anchors. Hello to Joe Grieve and Leah Martin from the XR team that are with us in the chat as well. Like, the whole family is joining.
Yeah. No, thank you all. So we've got like one of the examples that we had there was like the AR simple example was in that scene. We've got the AR planes. So that gives us various 3D planes that you can use for whatever your scripting needs are, for maybe attaching objects to a desk or something. Or, I mean, the limit is your imagination, depending on what kind of goals you have for the headsets. And the nice thing is, because of OpenXR and the work we've done, you should be able to do it right at once and run it on Android XR, any major headset. And that should also make sure that, like, if you're porting from something that already exists to Android XR, it should be relatively painless
and smooth. Yep.
Yeah. So here we're jumping back in time to the setup.
Javier Busto that just joined, which also I think worked on the MR multiplayer tabletop template.
Awesome. Yeah,
we had him on the stream lately on YouTube before, so you guys can watch that stream also.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got definitely other streams that you can watch and that might give you some other more in-depth options that for this. So we'll just kind of skip through this because it's a basic setup. You've got your Unity gaming services, and this helps set up your multiplayer. And if you've set it up through Unity Hub and you're attached already, most of this stuff should be filled in. You don't have to do anything complicated.
Love that.
Our little green check mark. We've got voice chat built in, so that's nice. And since it was all set up already in the hub, we're already done. So that gets you.
You're getting all the check marks.
Yeah.
I love how simple that was.
I should be doing work here. But so we'll hop back through. Since we didn't have it already set up in this one, this was the package edition. I should quickly go through the overview of, we've got build profiles here. So since I've been set up with the old method of adding through packages, I haven't actually gotten this, but you can just enable the platform and you're pretty much good to go with Android XR when you set up the build profile. Now, I'm in the classic Android build platform, and that's still just fine as long as you add the package that we had previously installed on our other project. So the usual, you got to load up all the scripts and get things reconfigured, but of course it's still automatic. You just got to wait.
Mm-hmm.
So once we get through this, we'll hop in back into project settings, and I can actually enable the features for Android XR, which is what enables us to use like the pass-through camera and some of the other platform-specific bits.
Of how the changelog is from literally June 30. Cannot
Yep.
be more fresh than that.
Yep, all new. So we've got OpenXR. We're not going to have to mess with the other headsets right now, so we'll uncheck MetaQuest and we'll check Android XR. And by default, we just select everything,
Cool.
which shouldn't be too much of an issue. You shouldn't really have to mess with, unless you have some very specific use cases, you shouldn't have to mess with unchecking various things. It'll just build and run, and at that point, we're looking at this on the headset. So we've got a little bit, there's of course all of the various tutorial bits. We can kind of jump through just kind of the sample scene here. And this is applicable to anything, even not just Android XR, but it kind of goes through, there's the table UI for the various games that you can run on the table and extend if you want to. You've got the UI for getting set up in multiplayer. So a lot of the basics, just for even if you wanted to maybe make your own experience, but work off of something that exists instead of creating something from scratch. So, and that's what the tutorials are kind of pointing out, the important bits of the scene. We've also got, so we went through kind of the pass-through camera stuff. We also have various features that aren't used here, but you might want to enable for Android XR.
Mm-hmm.
So possibly you want to maybe make it so that you've used the depth occlusion feature of the headset, where objects, mixed reality objects in the scene might get blocked by something that's closer. And we kind of got a preview of that in our slideshow. We had the video
Yes.
trailer for Android XR where we had the sphere getting
The white
blocked.
sphere.
Yeah. So we have to get ourselves to the material for the table. And we've got this set up as a shader graph here. So if we want to edit our virtual surface shader, so fun with shader graphs, everything for the table is set up in the shaders, which this was a fun thing for me, is you can even modify the table through shader graph. It's not like a texture or
that's so cool.
That. Yeah. So we have a little quick thing here. Was give me a second. I'm going to bring up some of the other projects. We've got some samples here that exist for our AR Foundation, and that includes some of the resources for like depth occlusion and other mixed reality features, augmented reality like the planes.
That's the beauty of XR, where AR feeds MR, and now that it's becoming more and more popular to have VR moving into MR, there's a lot of things that we can read.
A lot of crossover, and kind of why everybody's adopted XR as the terminology is just because it's kind of a spectrum of things from one end of just overlaying to fully immersive,
and I like
everything in between,
because it's not just exactly there. Like you can have a lot of games that could be a little bit of both, or it's sometimes very fluid.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things in the sample of the mix or the template itself is that there's a little button. I don't know, while we wait here for a second, I might be able to show it up in here.
Mm-hmm.
I should make this bigger, but we've got these little buttons here. Yeah, it lets you kind of pop around via different definitions of. We've got like AR where it's kind of just overlaid in the scene, and then MR where it's adding various pass-through features, and VR where it basically encloses you in the sort of holodeck setup.
I would say just for this button, it's worth trying this template, even if you're not planning.
I mean, literally, you can load it up and build it. You don't even have to mess with the tutorial bits and just test it. It's got a chess game and some freeform, just like toss items around the table kind of thing.
And I'm not saying that because I work at Unity. I'm really not biased when I say this. It is the best visual metaphor that I've seen in my XR career for this spectrum that you're talking about right now. Because I think every person that has to do a XR presentation to people that have never tried a headset before, they end up having the spectrum logo or something to explain to people like this transition between the different places. But this button and the team that worked on it did such a fantastic job, because you really see the world either being stopped at the table level or wrapping around you. And it's a very perfect metaphor for this encapsulating XR umbrella.
So I'm bringing in a shader from our AR Foundation. And this one we use the shader to block out the items that are not available, that something is rendering in front of.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So it's kind of like dimming the object, you would say, a little bit, or creating a...
if you want to get technical, it sets the alpha on the object so that it's transparent, and any place where the depth is shallower than the object, shallower in real space than the object is in the scene.
I love that.
Gotta find my other friend here, Occlusion Unlit. More fun with shader graphs. I like writing shaders, but shader graphs fun just to noodle around with too.
I mean, it's two different school of thoughts, but the logic is the same. And I guess your brain is able to adapt to both.
So this one, we hop back into our shader graph.
Oh, Joe just said in this channel, shout out to Javier for making that incredible shader.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, I looked at it and I was very pleased and kind of excited at the same time, just how thorough and honestly, because it's shader graph, you can modify it and have some fun with it. Create node. So the occlusion's based on our world position. So thankfully, that's the default for when we pick position nodes. And we can set that and then also set our color input from our original color input. And the result color mixes that alpha in automatically. So that gets us, we can save our shader graph, and then that lets us, when we build, we get to, if the table is, say, below my desk, will disappear. So that's one option. There's also the option of
that it's actually not
actually in reality. I mean, another thought was we were talking about planes earlier. Is maybe you can make it snap to a plane instead. That might take a little more work, and I don't know that you'd want to watch me do the entire thing on the stream.
No, we're just noodling around today. But I love that idea. It's the fact that you could literally apply this to any use case.
Mm-hmm. Give it a sec while it queries for Android devices, but then we'll run a build and show you, yes, this actually does build. Great. Give me a sec. I think we forgot to switch platform here earlier, so we're going to do that real quick.
Yes, actually, I think Jonah said that in the chat. He was like, "You're in Windows."
Yeah, that's all right.
The stream, everybody is looking at every single button and actually helps us.
Yeah. I'll hop over to our other one, which we already set up the same way. If you go to the virtual surface shader and pop it up, we've got that already set up in here. So we end up building and...
Hello, Bradston. Bradston that works in the advocacy team with me and is specifically focused on education. So if you're working with universities or anything, feel free to drop messages in the chat, connect with Bradston. We can make stuff happen, like coming to present something, do workshops, game jams, presentations, whatever makes sense.
Yeah.
Love supporting education.
So that's kind of what I had in mind to at least show off. And we have, I mean, I'm happy to answer questions if we had anything, but that's kind of our later segment anyway.
Mm-hmm. So that's it, basically. And I think someone was asking in the chat, Frederick, how much difference between Android XR and mixed reality? Is a mixed reality project a subset of Android XR? So a mixed reality project from MetaQuest can be built for Android XR just by building for that platform. And Joe was saying that basically, yes, it's super easy to jump between the two platforms, and there's just some flags, feature flags for OpenXR to check. So yes, it is that.
I mean, I think the jumping around has been made really simple, really easy, and kind of my only thought is if you have a way more complicated project, maybe you've got like controller models or something that you might need to update and add a switch for, depending on which platform you're building for. But using kind of either generic stuff or hands or other things like that, you end up not necessarily needing to switch stuff up. We've done a lot of work especially through like AR Foundation, so that anything that works in AR Foundation on other headsets should work just fine in Android XR.
Love that. Okay.
Yeah. So there we go. We got our build and
also, Trisha is telling us that Android XR is also a hands-first platform. So for people that didn't know, and you're interested into making more hand tracking experience or hand-first experience, not specifically controller, you're welcome on that platform to be able to port your games that you already have working with hand tracking or to create new ideas.
Yeah, and playing with the sample. The nice thing with these newer samples is that they are built with hands in mind, so you can like pinch and grab and move around the table, resize it.
And we'll talk about it again at the end when we close, but there is also a stream next Thursday on Shader Graph. So for people that have been just excited a little bit about what Jacob was showing, we have more coming to you next week.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of depth to Shader Graph, lots of options. It's like I said, I enjoy manually writing shaders, but there's certain workflows and definitely like tech art where it's really easy to maybe tweak certain existing shader graphs or build a new shader graph to test out, or even build production shaders for materials. And I can't say enough good things about Shader Graph.
Love that. And yeah, for those of you joining us right now, what we're doing is showcasing Android XR via the Unity's multiplayer mixed reality sample.
So we've gotten through the build, and
Awesome.
look, yeah, everything is nice and happy. And like I said, this was originally set up with
70
seconds.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be so fast for a initial build. I think our initial build for me was about 7 minutes, and thankfully
Wow,
this is our incremental build. So we're looking at a little faster, thankfully.
Love that.
Yeah.
Jonas in the chat saying that his game was built for hand tracking first, so that's great for me. Yes, it is.
Yeah. No, I enjoy hand tracking, and I've definitely been real happy with hand tracking on Android XR.
Awesome. Someone also, TJ in YouTube, saying that he works for education in Brazil. Would be cool to connect about development. Absolutely. Well, reach out to Bradston in the chat.
Pardon me.
Cool. All right. So we're going to move to the next section of the stream, which is our community Q&A. So I know some questions were asked earlier, and we had a couple that Jackson took attention to save for me so I can go through them. So people from both, I think, Twitch and YouTube. So the first question is from Matt Brox on YouTube. Does Unity Android XR is supported on Android mobile device? And if it does, like for OpenXR, we need a loader. Does Android XR have a startup loader, or do mobile manufacturer have to make one enable on device?
I can take that one. So it's a fantastic question. So currently, no. Right now, Android XR is headset focused. And for mobile, you would still use Air Course. You could use Air Foundation. I think, as everybody in this ecosystem is kind of looking forward and kind of what goals are, I wouldn't be surprised to see things kind of start to converge, right? And even starting to bring some of those aspects over to the working groups and figuring out how these things are extensible, so that there is an added layer of that build once deploy everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they are all piping through Air Foundation. So Air Foundation is that's a good place to start if you are working on both platforms.
Perfect. And I know a couple questions also came out about, hey, there's still no access to headset. How do we, get prepared for the platform and so on? You can start building. You don't need to wait for the headset, and Unity allows you to do that. Maybe if you can add a few points on that, Trisha or Jacob.
Yeah, I think this is, listen, it's a big deal. When people are looking at new platforms, they want to know, one, when am I going to have access to actually build my experience to device? And when am I going to have access to users for that device? What I would say right now is this. Obviously, we don't control the devices ourselves. But what we do control is the platform, and what we do care about is you getting as far as possible on this platform until you have that device. So what I would say is this: you've got a couple of options. Obviously, if you are working on other OpenXR platforms, you can try a lot of these features out. You can get pretty far on any other OpenXR platform. Take that as you will. So, I would say if you don't have an experience yet, let's say you're starting new, you can still get about 90% of the way there working with other OpenXR platforms. If you do have an experience, fantastic. You're 90% of the way there, or 85% of the way there. Outside of that, let's say you have no devices at all. You do have some options through our simulation. So you do have the Air Foundation simulator. You do have the XRI simulator. Now, right now, those simulation experiences, so your input and your ARF features, they are in two different simulation experiences. You can bring those together. It was a little buggy for Unity 6. That stuff has gotten cleared up. So if you feel confident using those simulators, that is an option for you. Now, RAF Simulator is not OpenXR specific, so there might be a couple of adjustments that you need to make there to get everything kind of working the way that you want it to work, but you can use that. And then, obviously good old play mode. So there is a lot you can do in the editor and with other OpenXR platforms to get you mostly there. And, what I would say is obviously continue to look for opportunities to get access to devices. So every platform tends to have opportunities for developers to maybe apply for boot camps or things like that. I know Google's been doing a lot of those initiatives. But then think about that 90%, right? How can you get 80 to 90% of the way so that as soon as a device is available to you through one path or another, you're mostly there. Really, at that point, you're just building to device. You're just tweaking, you're making sure visually everything feels good and
Thank you for that.
there.
Perfect answer. TJ with a beginner question about the XR template. Is it supposed to work on any VR headset? We use Pico or just in MetaQuest? Absolutely any headset. Please have fun.
Yeah, it's supposed to be cross OpenXR, so it should work even on the Pico headset they're talking about.
Jonas on YouTube. Any suggestion how to best handle different performance levels for different headsets?
Ooh, good question. You probably have an answer there, Jacob. I do too.
I mean, it's definitely depends on the experience that you're running, but a lot of player settings, like this runs in URP, so URP quality settings, and based on the different device options, quality presets, and all the other various knobs that I don't currently have enumerated in my head that URP allows you to for graphics performance. I don't have as many details for potentially other things, but there are a lot of knobs that you can turn just in the player settings just to get a better performance experience out of it.
Perfect. Matt Brox again with another question. Does Android XR is going to replace AR Core on mobile device in the future?
Good question. So I think we kind of talked about that before. Nothing at this point that we're working, we're working to do in that area. But I think ultimately the goal is that all of these things are extensible to as many devices in an ecosystem as possible. So I think as an ecosystem and with the platforms we support, I think everybody is working towards the goal of these platforms extending to as many places as possible.
Perfect. Jonas again with another question. Will Android Adaptive Performance Package be compatible on Horizon OS and Android XR in the future?
Good question. So adaptive performance is something that we've certainly had conversations on. I can't comment on the Horizon OS side. I know that on the Android side, one of the opportunities of Android XR and really with all Android ecosystems is there are a lot of things that work out of the box, and you do get the natural benefit of because of the Android ecosystem. So extending over from Android. So I can't comment on adaptive performance specifically at this point, but a lot of the benefits that you see or you can see on Android will extend over to Android XR.
Perfect. And we have a question in the chat quickly from Shadow Trap. Can I use my MetaQuest 2 even without color pass-through?
I mean, I would say yes. Clearly, you'll get black and white pass-through since that's the technical limitation you have, but it doesn't. It shouldn't create any build stoppers or play stoppers, show stoppers.
Perfect. And a question from one of our most recurring viewer, The Bull, which is always supporting us in every live stream we do. What are your favorite outside the box projects you've seen this used for? So I don't know if this is specifically what we were showing today, but I'll let you answer as you understand it.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't want to give away anything that anybody is working on, obviously ahead of launch. But I think what I'm most excited about is I'm seeing people really, really, really push the boundaries from I think a visual and performance aspect. So, even as you get into things like videos and much more kind of graphically complex experiences, headsets are they're getting better, right? So sensors are getting better. I think screens are getting better, resolutions are getting better, things like that. And I think seeing people really, really work to push those boundaries. So if somebody's not breaking something, it might be a little less interesting, right? And if they are breaking something, then it gives us new problems to solve. And new problems to solve for any experience means new problems to solve for everybody.
And I think it's another call out for the discussions forum, which is super active. The team is looking at it. If people are using it right now and having struggle, it's a good place to ask question. Even sometimes you might get answers from the rest of the community before we do, but we have the team PMs, engineers looking at it every day. So definitely hit up the discussions forum. And we have shared the link in the chat. Thank you, Jackson, again. Thank you, Jonas, for all your questions. That was very, very useful. We have another one I see from Kian471111 Dub. Will Android XR and MetaQuest be able to do cross-platform multiplayer together?
I can't answer this authoritatively. So it might be, I don't know if Joe Grieve in chat can, but the intent is typically, write once and run on all the platforms, and UGS, kind of like everything else, is we do the heavy lift and make things play nice together. So like I said, not authoritative, but I believe that is the case.
Technically you should. Now it's a platform question. Yeah. Another question from the same person. Will you be able to cross-platform a VR headset with a see-through XR glasses? I guess it's very similar answer.
I mean, you get to what is possible, and I mean, at a certain point, it depends on the experience that you're running and what level of compromise. So it depends on, UGS should work wherever it's supported. So clearly one is going to be a different experience than the other, but you can still integrate two different experiences into something coherent.
Yeah, perfect.
What I will add on that one is I think glasses are getting talked about a whole lot out there. And so everybody's kind of thinking about like VST and OST and what does this mean for the ecosystem and what does it mean for my content? And how does that content interact on different devices and how does it interact together? And those are things that we are all actively thinking through right now. And we're trying to think through, what do we expose and where do we expose it and how, so that, again, ideally your content, not everything is going to be the exact same on all of these devices, but we will do as much as we can do and we feel is the right thing to do to help make your content compatible on these different devices.
Well, thank you so much, Trisha and Jacob. That was amazing. Thanks for helping answer the questions as well, and for everyone from the Unity team in the chat, and obviously all of you viewers watching us today. There's definitely more content coming on the XR front as we're getting closer and closer to those release. And we have a lot of content that have already been published. Some things that we've never actually acknowledged or shared on the channel are going to drop in the chat very soon. So as we wrap up, I'm going to share some very interesting information with you all. So we have a mixed reality sample building video that just dropped in 2 parts. Jackson is actually sharing it right now in the chat. So you have the tutorial link to part 1, which also will lead to the part 2. And we have our XR free technical ebook for world building that is also available right now. So please take a second to watch it. It's been a lot of work from the team working on it, and it's super valuable. You can download it or just read it online. And we have a couple new stuff coming soon. So next week, our next appointment is going to be our stream on Tuesday, July 15. We'll be joined by Andrew and Albert from Shiny Shoe, the creators of Monster Train. And I've played the game. It's amazing. To show you how to turn good deck builder game design into great deck builder game design. So stay tuned for that. And I think we mentioned it also earlier. During the stream on Thursday, I believe we'll have a shader graph focused live stream. So again, thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure to host this one, as I'm a big fan of XRs, all this headset behind me. But I'm super excited to have been able to welcome Trisha and Jacob from the Android XR team and you. And thank you for all your participation, your questions. Keep them coming. Again, discussions forum. And you can also watch this in VOD later if you missed anything. Thank you again, and see you soon.